Hello everyone, I'm Jack Fisher and welcome to my world. And I hope you brought a strong stomach and a durable spirit today, because I'm going to talk about The Boys again. Both the hit TV show on Amazon Prime and the comics that inspired it. That means you'll have to leave your idealism, decency, and squeamishness at the door. Those things do not last in the world of The Boys. Now, let me make one thing clear. I love this show. It's one of my favorite shows to binge at the moment. I'm also a big fan of the comics. I followed many of them throughout the mid-2000s, so I'm very familiar with the brutal, bloody, and sometimes ugly themes of this dark world. And I'm not going to lie, when I heard this show was being made into a TV show, I was skeptical. The comics were wrought with gratuitous sex, violence, and exploitation. I didn't see how this show could be translated into a functioning TV show, at least without running afoul of the FCC, 1 Million Moms, and anyone with a weak stomach. But the folks at Amazon Prime found a way. Yes, they did have to tone down some of the most graphic elements from the comics, but they managed to inject just enough sex and violence to capture the true spirit of The Boys. See my review of Season 2 for some of the graphic details. And it's a hell of a spirit, that's for sure. The Boys is basically the ultimate satire, injecting the superhero genre with a lethal dose of cynicism. The creators, Garth Ennis and Derek Robertson, took every superhero trope and built a worst-case scenario around it. Take all the heroes you love and cherish, then make them the most selfish, egotistical, narcissistic assholes you can possibly imagine. Then create characters who dare to stand up to them. It's pretty brutal stuff, and it's glorious. Again, if you haven't seen the show, I highly recommend it. And if you've seen the show, but not the comics, I recommend that too. Just don't read it on a full stomach. This is mature stuff here, and it's not for the faint of heart. Now, I could talk about The Boys for hours, both the comics and the show. There are so many characters, themes, and plots to break down, as I already did in my video review. And given the sheer breadth of the superhero genre, there's plenty to deconstruct. However, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to focus on one particular character, the colorful yet crude Homelander. Being such a prominent character in both the show and the comics, it's easy to see him as just another evil version of Superman. And that's accurate to some extent. Like many of the other so-called heroes in The Boys, Homelander is basically a dark parody of the iconic Man of Steel. But there's much more to him than the character he's based on. I'm here to argue that Homelander, in all his overpowered depravity, is the perfect villain for the 21st century. Even at a time when great villains like Thanos, the Joker, and Walter White have dominated the pop culture landscape, I'm going to argue that Homelander is worse than all of them in all the right ways. He's not just more villainous in general. What makes him so villainous is a dark yet fitting reflection of 21st century trends. To understand Homelander's villainous extremes, it's necessary to understand the context of the source material. The Boys as a comic came out in the mid-2000s. It wasn't that long ago, but it was still a different time, both for the world and for the superhero genre. This was a time when we were all still traumatized by the September 11th attacks. People, in general, still clung to the general optimism of the late 90s, but couldn't ignore the less than encouraging trends. The emergence of the internet and social media only made us more aware. Everyone kept looking for heroes, but only found their flaws. And this extended to mainstream superhero comics. Around this time, superheroes began fighting each other more than their villains. In Marvel, this culminated in the acclaimed Civil War event, and in DC, it manifested in stories like Tower of Babel. They all had similar themes. These heroes that we love and admire have serious flaws, and sometimes these flaws make them seem like assholes. That's where The Boys comes in. Ennis and Robertson took that sentiment to an absurd extreme. The Boys was billed as the ultimate middle finger to idealistic heroes. It created a world where superheroes weren't just assholes, they were cruel, sadistic, narcissistic sociopaths, and they operated in a world that still saw them as heroes. Now trust me, it's crazier and bloodier than you think, more so than the show depicted. And Homelander was the perfect embodiment of this spirit. Like the show, he's one of the first characters we encounter in the comics. And it isn't long before we realize just what a monster this guy is. He carries himself with this heroic zeal. He's part Superman and part Captain America, wearing an American flag as a cape and espousing all the right virtues for his adoring public. But once the cameras are off and nobody's watching, he shows his true colors, and they aren't pretty. Like a beloved celebrity with a dark side, Homelander exploits every aspect of his status. Sex, violence, extortion, there's no line he won't cross. And he won't always do it for a reason. He simply does it because he can. The show nicely captured that too. He flat out says he can do whatever the fuck he wants, not just because he has superpowers, but because he's a goddamn hero and a celebrity. It's a distressing situation born out of the same distressing realizations about the heroes we respect. Homelander just takes it to an extreme. But beyond the context, there's another aspect to Homelander's villainy that gives even greater weight to his deviance. Beyond injecting the superhero genre with an excessive dose of satire and cynicism, The Boys emphasizes another dark influence, namely that of greedy, amoral corporations. Now, most people are aware that corporations can be assholes. Some really are downright evil. I won't name names, but you don't have to look far to find examples. But in The Boys, Homelander's level of villainy just isn't possible without the aid and support of an evil corporation. It's one thing for Superman to just run amok and be a dick. It's another for a corporation to hide, fund, and even profit from his deplorable behavior. And that's where Vought Industries comes in. They're the ones who make Homelander and others like him heroes in the eyes of the public. They're the ones who control, market, and profit from their image. They're essentially the logistics and business aspect of everything involving superheroes. From toys to movies to merchandise and trademarks, they run it all. And like Homelander, Vought is not subtle about their motives. They don't care about truth, justice, in the American way. They just care about making a profit. If that means hiding every superhero's egregious misdeeds, they'll gladly do that. And if it means subverting the justice system, bribing officials, and letting innocent people die, they'll do that too without hesitation. So long as it turns a profit, they really don't give a damn. Like Homelander, Vought embodies the ugliest aspects of a concept, namely that of a corporation. Call them evil all you want. What they do is really not that different from what corporations in the real world often do. They're motivated by profit, not heroism. Yes, many do engage in respectable, altruistic behavior, but Vought, like Homelander, is the ultimate manifestation of an extreme. This is how bad things can get. This is what could happen in a world where superheroes exist and an entire industry is built around them. That system doesn't just enable and empower, it also corrupts. It amplifies the absolute worst in people. Homelander is already the antithesis of Superman, but giving him a corporate sponsor, complete with money, lawyers, and lobbyists, just makes him so much worse. In just 2 seasons of the TV show, he's done some terrible things within that system and he's gotten away with it. And in the comics, he does so much worse. And Vought funds it every step of the way because superheroes are just too profitable. While Homelander isn't the only superhero that Vought sponsors, he is the most prominent. Now, we already live in a world where corporations sponsor, brand, and profit from anything. Homelander is just the personification of how far that greed will take them. So, let's take a step back and assess the overall situation. Homelander is an asshole with Superman's power and Captain America's prestige. He's got $1 billion company funding his antics and covering up his atrocities. And thanks to Vought, he enjoys the image of a superhero while conducting himself as a sociopathic villain. What does that all lead to? Besides, of course, a glut of gratuitous sex and graphic violence. Essentially, it puts Homelander in a situation where he operates with zero accountability and no consequences. He can murder, rape, torture, and slaughter as he pleases. He'll never be charged with a crime. He'll never spend a second in jail. Because of Vought, he'll never even face angry mobs on social media. It's the best possible position for a villain and the worst position for everyone else. We're all at Homelander's mercy. There's literally nothing they can do to stop him. It's also here where that context I mentioned earlier comes back into play, because both the comics and the TV show play into it. For the comics, the mid-2000s were a banner year for powerful people who faced no accountability. corporations like Enron showed how an organization could exploit thousands and face few to no consequences. Then came the Iraq War, and the well-documented lies that led us into it. Again, powerful people did egregious things, but faced no consequences. Like Homelander, they operated in a system that allowed them to do anything and not face any serious repercussions. This was just as relevant when the show came out in 2019, because if anything, this has gotten even worse. We've become a lot more aware of how governments and corporations evade responsibility. Wells Fargo, Purdue Pharma, and major military powers get away with so many transgressions that it's hardly even news anymore. It's a distressing trend and one that Homelander embraces to the utmost. Watching him operate on the show, you see more than just a villain or a phony hero. You see someone who's completely unrestrained, both physically and legally. It's disturbing, disgusting, and downright depraved at times. Seriously, there are moments from the comics I doubt will make it into the show. They're really that bad. But the last scene in Season 2 should give you a hint of just how bad it can get. And The Boys isn't subtle about the larger implications here. Put someone like Homelander in a position like this, empowered, unburdened, and backed by an evil corporation, and he's not going to be a hero. He's going to be a goddamn monster. And innocent people will suffer because of it, and they'll suffer a lot. That's also where Homelander's villainy gains even greater depth, especially when compared to other modern villains. Think back to all the best villains in the current cultural zeitgeist, be they from superhero media or some other genre. Now, recount their crimes and misdeeds, the ones that definitely hurt innocent people, and hurt them badly. Can you name one of those victims? Can you even remember their face? It's an inescapable logistic, especially for superhero media. For a villain to be a villain, they need to have victims. And those victims have to be innocent if the villain is going to be a true villain. However, the names of those victims, as well as the violent circumstances of their death, often go overlooked. Their suffering is primarily a plot device meant to move the story forward. Most superhero stories either gloss over it or tone down the violence. And The Boys does none of that, especially when Homelander is involved. Both the show and the comics are very overt. They depict the faces and show the horror of Homelander's victims. From the terrified cries of passengers on a crashing plane to just some random street thug, we see the suffering they endure. And we watch as Homelander inflicts this suffering without a shred of remorse. Sometimes he's downright gleeful about the pain he causes. It's one of the most uncomfortable aspects to his character, which is saying something. It's also a defining theme in The Boys. It highlights how innocent people often get caught in the crossfire of superhero conflicts. And nobody cares about them. Nobody tells their story. People only care about how it affects their quote-unquote heroes. This makes Homelander's egregious acts even worse. Not only is he willing to hurt innocent people, he'll do it with a perverse satisfaction. Hurting innocent people just doesn't bother him. Even though all villains hurt people, many of their stories try to overlook it, if only to keep a villain from being too evil. But by not doing that, the extent of Homelander's villainy is there for all to see. It's on display, unfiltered and unambiguous. There's no secret to hide or excuses to make. This is what someone like him is when all his dirtiest secrets are there for all to see. And in an era where the dark secrets of celebrities and politicians are increasingly exposed, Homelander fits perfectly within that zeitgeist. Think of the worst things a beloved hero or celebrity could do in private. Chances are, Homelander has done it and done it with a goddamn smile. It doesn't just make him an incredibly disturbed individual, it highlights a critical flaw in the very concept of superheroes, one that Homelander also exploits with a perverse smile. Homelander is a lot of things. Humble is not one of them. But, unlike most ordinary people, he has a valid reason for feeling that way. He really is superior to the rest of society. In terms of strength, power, and ability, he is superhuman. To him, we're not just weaker and more vulnerable, we might as well be insects. Many famous superheroes are in a similar position. Superman towers above every other human in terms of ability and power. Other characters like Iron Man, Black Panther, Green Lantern, and the Flash stand out in similar ways. Their powers and abilities are such that no ordinary person has any hope of standing up to them. These characters could crush every one of us with little effort, and there would be nothing we could do to stop them. And yet, we worship them. We admire them and cheer them on. We collectively give them this reified status. Even if they wield their power responsibly, like Superman, this adulation hides an important fact. It makes us all accept this situation, this system where superhuman beings can lord over us and we're just powerless to stop them. And Homelander takes full advantage of that inclination. He knows he wields power that most ordinary people can't even hope to grasp. He also sees them look up at him and cheer him on like he's a god among men. So of course he's going to look down on people. Of course that's going to affect how he treats people. And he relishes it. He also hates it when someone dares to make him feel less than superior. It's one of the reasons why his clash with Billy Butcher is so heated. Unlike everyone else, Billy sees through the hero worship. He goes out of his way to belabor how this attitude towards heroes just lets them get away with their atrocities. Homelander just happens to be the worst offender, and he's proud of that. Homelander loves being idolized as a hero while committing gross atrocities. It doesn't serve some larger agenda. He's not like Lex Luthor or Dr. Doom in that he has this grand vision for the world. He just does all these terrible things because he wants to. He thinks they're fun, and he knows he can get away with it. The mere fact his misdeeds are so horrible only further highlights the flaws in hero worship. Even though he's got $1 billion corporation protecting him, it's still the general public who fuels this collective mindset. It's a mindset that helps us tolerate this otherwise intolerable situation, living in a world where superpowered beings can just fly in, snap our necks, and get away with it. The fact that Homelander maintains this image as a hero while also being the antagonist in The Boys is a true testament to his character. Other villains may see themselves as heroes in their own right, but Homelander is under no illusions. He knows what he is. He likes being adored as a hero while he indulges in some of his most unheroic behavior. It's an extreme form of chaotic evil. He hides his true nature while exploiting his power and position to the utmost. He represents a kind of villainous evil that just can't exist without a certain system in place to support it. Some are pure logistics, but others are less tangible. The Boys effectively sends this not-so-subtle warning that this is what happens when you deify heroes. You may think you're getting Superman, but in reality, you're enabling a figure like Homelander. And that's someone you don't want to enable. On his own, Homelander is already an asshole in the highest order. He doesn't need vaught, hero worship, or superpowers to be a truly menacing villain. He's already a petty, selfish, egotistical narcissist. Any one individual with those traits has the basic workings of a villain. It's everything the Boys builds around him, the public praise, the corrupt system, and the shady corporate dealings. That's what puts his villainy on another level. And it works so well in the 21st century because we've lost so much of the idealism that drove us in decades past. Characters like Superman, Captain America, Spider-Man, and the Fantastic Four all emerge within a different cultural landscape. There was a greater sense of hope in the future. We believed the authorities could be trusted. We believed our celebrities and cultural icons could be trusted. We imparted into them our highest values, hoping they would bring out the best in everyone. Slowly but surely, those hopes faded. Some were outright crushed. We're now painfully aware of just how much power, money, and status corrupts people. We see it all the time in Hollywood, Wall Street, and in every hall of power. We see it so often that we've come to expect it. Someone makes a lot of money and becomes a big star. They either become an asshole or we eventually find out how big an asshole they've always been. The world of The Boys may be cynical and dark, but it's painfully consistent with this trend. And nobody personifies it more than Homelander. That's what makes him the ultimate villain for this current era. It's not just that he does horrible things for selfish reasons. He does these things while carrying himself as a hero to the masses. There's no vision or plan behind it. He's just a sociopath, manipulating and forcing others into his bidding. His motivations may be basic, but the way he goes about it is what makes him truly terrifying. And at a time when villains of all kinds are gaining complexity and nuance, Homelander really does just keep things basic. He's a reminder of just how villainous someone can be in a world that enables his every narcissistic whim. He's both a product of these disturbing times and of a genre that thinks too highly of those with great power. But what do you think? Do you agree with my take on Homelander? Do you think he's the ultimate villain for the strange, scary times we're living in? Let me know. I'd love to do more videos of the boys, and there's plenty more to discuss, preferably on an empty stomach. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks for joining me in my world. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Take care, and stay safe.